Good afternoon. I guess you can hear me. I guess you can hear me. This program we're doing today is basically a program in response to the 50th anniversary of the Scenic Rivers program here in Virginia. And Virginia has one of the best in the country, and Lynn will be sharing some of that information. We created about 2 years ago now a committee of
Closer to three.
three, time goes fast, a committee of about 40 people that have been involved in the program over its 50-year period. And we came up with a schedule of events which obviously was modified due to COVID and all of the constraints that we had to go through with that. The photographs that you see out here in the gallery were produced for that 50th anniversary event, and they were on display for approximately 2 months down at the Main Street station. And there was a formal Zoomed program that was participated in, last year ago? About a year?
November, yeah.
About a year ago. And there people were recognized as well as the program. Prior to that, Scenic Virginia, I'm on the board of Scenic Virginia. Scenic Virginia, working with the Department of Conservation, developed a resolution to go before the General Assembly recognizing the 50th anniversary of the program. A copy of that is out there in the corridor. And Lynn and I and Leighton Powell from Scenic Virginia and several others went down to Westminster Canterbury in Kilmarnock and presented it to Governor Holton, who was the governor in 1970 that actually signed the legislation in place. We've got a number of committees that are representing certain rivers here in the state, and Patricia Pearsall, who just arrived, is on the Falls of the James Scenic River Advisory Committee, and that is it's one of the oldest rivers committees that we have. The river was designated a historic river in '72, became a scenic river later on as a result of a fight with a power plant, and but the committee has been around since the '72 period, and they've done wonderful work. You can thank that committee and the outreach that they did to all of the people that they needed to reach out to for the river that we have now in the city of Richmond. Lynn has been one of the best things that has happened to Scenic Rivers and to the Department of Conservation and to the Commonwealth of Virginia in many, many, many years, decades. She took my job and made me look like a first grader in terms of how I managed things. But I did manage the program, and I did go through about 20 years without tipping over too many times. And as I say, your taxpayer dollars paid for me and for Lynn to go down the river, and you got a better deal when Lynn was going down the river than you did with me, but that's beside the point. Lynn has a BLA and an MLA in landscape architecture, and I think both of those are from Tech.
Correct.
Correct. She's a registered landscape architect here in the state of Virginia, and she has worked at various levels of and scales of landscape architecture for over 30 years, both at the individual private scale, at homeowner scale, to the management of portions of the state comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, which she did with the Department of Conservation and Recreation. She has worked with the private sector. She's worked with local government, Chesterfield County and the city of Alexandria. She's worked with regional government, and she has worked for the State Department of Conservation and Recreation since 2003.
Yes.
2003. There, she only had a few responsibilities: Scenic Rivers, the Virginia Byways Program, the State Comprehensive Plan, master planning for state parks, and environmental reviews, and the scenic resource protection and preservation programs that we are now really getting into in a deeper way. She has done an excellent, excellent job. We could not be more thankful to have had her and have her in her current position. And with that, I am going to turn it over to you.
Thank you. I'm really humbled by that and very appreciative of Dick's kind remarks. Thank you all for having me here today. I have a first quick question. How many of you saw me speak here in 2017? Nobody. Jean was here. But, okay, so I won't be going over too much duplicative stuff for you all, but I am going to try and make this as interesting as I can. We are having this recorded so that you can see it again. So if you do have questions, we'd like for you to use the mic. If not, you just yell and I'll repeat it again and we can do that. Don't feel bashful about raising your hand and interrupting me to ask a question. I will be happy to have you all stop me and move on as we want. I'd like this to be more of a conversation. This setup doesn't really lend itself as easily to that, but I hope that you all will take that in mind as we move forward. So a lot of the photographs that I'm going to be seeing have been provided by Scenic Virginia. Dick mentioned them. Scenic Virginia's been around for 25 years? 20 years. 22, I think now. Anyway, over 20. How's that? And working to protect our scenic resources across the state. They've been very instrumental in a number of ways, which I'll touch on later. And hopefully you'll get a chance to have a full presentation on everything that they do. It's really kind of amazing. But we're going to focus first on scenic rivers, since you've had the exhibit up for 2 months now, almost. And hopefully all of you have been able to go by and see it. And so first I wanted to talk about the program's purpose. This program is committed to resource protection. And it is not an intention of regulation, codes and restrictions. It's about awareness and responsibility for that and recognizing the great things that happen along our rivers. You know, our rivers used to be transportation. That's how we got around. And then they were the dumping station, right? We just get rid of the trash, the refuge, downstream to somebody else. And starting in the 60s, we started paying attention to that in a lot more significant manner than we had ever before. And so this program has been birthed by that kind of awareness. Let's make sure I'm doing this right. Oops, wrong way. I knew it. Okay, so right now we have 37 river segments across the state, over 1,000 miles of river that are designated as scenic. So how many of you think that's a lot or a little? A lot? Raise your hand. A little? Raise your hand now. Just a couple. So a little is really kind of what it is, because it's less than 2% of all the rivers in Virginia. We have over 49,000 miles of river in Virginia, so 1,056 is not much. But these are rivers that are recognized for their significance of scenic, natural beauty, for recreation, and for historic values. This Virginia Outdoors Plan, which Dick mentioned, the first one was in 1965, and in that document, it was recognized the importance of our rivers and that we needed to start paying better attention to them. And this program then was started, and the first act, Scenic Rivers Act, was signed into legislation in 1970. So that's why we're 50 years later last year. But anyway, so that is how the impetus of this program came about. Many people confuse this program with National Wild and Scenic Rivers Program, which you hear a lot about as well. None of the rivers in Virginia are designated as National Wild and Scenic Rivers. This is a map of the rivers across the state. The ones in dark blue are those that are designated. The ones in orange have been studied at one time or another since 1970 and found to qualify. We have over 67 river segments that have been found to qualify that have not been designated. And that's because there has not been enough local support for their designations. And then the other green ones, when we do our Virginia Outdoors Plan, we ask our communities if there are any rivers in their communities they think would be qualified for designation, and those are the ones that have been recognized. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the benefits of the program and why people and communities seek it. Each community seeks it for its own reasons, and the reasons have changed over time. Back in 1970, it had a lot to do with water quality, protecting against dams. It had to do with helping to clean up the rivers. Now, then there went through a section where it was all about land conservation and not paying taxes along designated rivers. Now it's mostly about ecotourism. Communities, you know, are changing where their industry, what's paying their taxes. And so they're looking at the benefits of bringing people in to use their natural resources and making sure those resources are the highest quality they can be. So having this designation provides opportunities to consider scenic also in other kinds of planning opportunities. There's a lot of concern that this program's going to tell landowners what to do with their land. That's not it. The intention of this program is to allow for development, but to do it in a way that doesn't deplete the resources, scenic, historic, and natural. The only regulatory part of this is you can't build a dam on a designated river. Other than that, everything else is about recognition, and the responsibility of land control is at the local level. So this River Protection Act, it doesn't authorize new restrictions on riparian land use, and it doesn't provide opportunity, it does provide opportunities for planning. So any permit that goes through the state gets looked at from a scenic perspective. So if it's on a designated scenic river, we then talk about what's going on. So I have to ask, because this is one of my favorite places in the state. This is a 1,000-foot deep gorge. Does anybody know what it is? No. This is the Russell Fork. This is in Dickinson County at Breaks Interstate Park. Actually, the New River does not have a gorge this deep in Virginia. Just an aside. So if you ever get a chance to do a little traveling, go down to Breaks, stay in Catawba Lodge. You'll be right over the overlook and get to see this magnificent river. In the fall, it has dam releases, and expert kayakers from all over the world paddle the river. Otherwise, it's either too low or too high, and it's quite a dangerous river. But anyway, that's beside the point. Oops, wrong way again. I knew it. So Dick mentioned that we have committees. So when this program started, you could not have a river designated without a local committee. And that committee was appointed by the governor. So if you know how government works, it got very difficult after a while to keep having these committees appointed by the governor. We had less staff been able to support those committees, and a lot of the people that ended up getting appointed to the committees weren't either from the area or didn't care about the river anyway, and their involvement was not very good. So in 2003, they rewrote the law, and they said that and we're going to get rid of all the committees, but local groups like the Falls of the James and Goose Creek, they said, no, we want to keep meeting. We're doing good stuff here. We think it's important. So there was a provision put in to have a committee, and the committees were going to be appointed by the director of DCR. Much simpler process, not nearly as onerous in general. So right now we have 3 committees, the Falls of the James and Goose Creek, which have continued to exist. Catoctin went away for a while and now it has come back, and those 3 committees were instrumental in helping us plan our 50th anniversary. Right now in process is a group coming together on the Mormons River, which is in Albemarle County, and I think that has good trout fishing. You might have to double check me on that. And Trisha's a great fisherman, so you want to talk to Trisha Purcell when you get done. But anyway, so those committees, they meet on a regular basis as they want to, but they do send minutes and meeting announcements through DCR. And I try and attend those meetings at least once a year, if not more, depending on how things are going, and kind of keep a pulse. And I'm there for any community that has a designated scenic river to ask questions about or to give comments on things. So as I mentioned, it's been 50 years since the program started. We had great support from inside DCR for websites. We had support from Piedmont Environmental Council. I don't know if you've ever heard from them. They got interns to do what they call ArcGIS storyboards. And if any of you are computer savvy at all, you should go online to our website and you can just type in Virginia Scenic Rivers and you will be able to see these amazing stories that they told through picture and word about the Scenic River program. And these are the ones that have gotten developed. Not only through that, we also had some interns at DCR that helped do that as well. We also created an interactive map of the state rivers. So you can go on and you can click on it and it tells you what river it is and where it started and stopped. As I mentioned, a web page was created. This is actually probably going to go down soon, but we're trying to figure out how we can keep the stories, the river maps, and some of the other information that was created for this website for people to use from now on as well. There were a lot of social media impressions, they call them. That's how many times people have clicked on or looked at something. So we feel like it was very successful. One of the most successful things was Virginia Living magazine did its first photo shoot article, and it was about our scenic rivers. And that's thank you to Trisha Purcell, because she was instrumental in getting that done. And if you didn't get to see it, you should look it up, because they did an amazing job. They hired a photographer to go out and look at some of our scenic rivers, great photographs, and then online they did an amazing article online that you can still look at. We also did the coasters. I meant to bring some, I forgot them, I'm sorry, but we distributed them to over 150 wineries and breweries across the state. And then we did the decals that you can get up here and a new brochure. So having those businesses show their support was also really important and very helpful as we move forward. We had a film night with Rapflow, the Rappahannock, Friends of the Rappahannock, where they highlighted a movie that they had done, and we had, I don't know, 30 people approximately did it, and it was a virtual movie night, so that made it kind of odd, you know, things are always weird now, but they had over 400 people actually watch it afterwards, so that was good. Oops, wrong way again. And then we had the exhibit, and it was actually in Main Street Station for 3.5 months. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of COVID, and the streets, you had to knock to be let in. So we're not sure how many people actually saw it, and it was too bad because, as you can see, let's make sure if I can get this working. this was in an enclosed glass area, and right here was a video screen where we had a loop that had amazing film of a number of our rivers and still photos of others. They had interviews with Tricia and a number of other people on several of the rivers. It was really an excellent program. And the posters, as I said, are up here for you guys. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about the process. I know you all aren't really involved in that, but my hope is that if you hear about this program, you have anybody talking about it at a party or in your neighborhood or in your children's neighborhood or wherever, you'll at least be cognizant about what is done. This is a grassroots effort. The state doesn't come in and tell people what to do. It's the responsibility of the locality to want this. And they write a letter to ask us if they can do it. And as long as their request meets the minimum criteria, you don't need to know what that is. It's evaluated. If it's determined to be qualified for scenic river designation, then a report's put together, resolutions are put together from the locality, and it's the responsibility of the local jurisdiction to tell us what's going on. I mean, to get their legislators to move it forward. So, are there any questions about the Scenic Rivers program now? I know I didn't talk a lot about it, and I didn't talk about it in depth because I felt like that would get too busy. But if there aren't any questions, I'm going to talk to you, kind of pull back a little bit and talk about why bother designating them again. So scenic rivers are designated. It's a way for communities to tell and advertise what's good about their community. The same thing goes for scenic byways. We have an extensive Virginia byways program, one of, again, a lot of over 3,000 miles of road are designated as Virginia byways. But, so that's providing an awareness. And then the locality can use that. And some localities are promoting it wildly, you know, and saying, come see our scenic rivers, come see, go drive on our byways, see our wonderful landscapes. Others aren't doing anything with it. But it is also a way to help meet our land conservation goals for the state. I don't know if you've been watching the news, but our current governor, not the one that's getting ready to come in, but anyway, our current governor has been pushing for land conservation since he got into office, for protecting those incredible resources that we have and learning, having communities use them well, whether it's prime ag land, prime forest land, floodways, whatever. And in that process, a lot of the land trusts that are working with that and Scenic Virginia came together and said, we need a layer that talks about scenery. The view sheds in Virginia are spectacular. Most of the people, something like 80% of the people, come to visit Virginia because it's beautiful. And so we need to make sure we don't lose that. And if you all are aware of the fight for Libby Hill to protect that view shed, which has been going on for nearly 30 years, this is why this became so important. And so there's also a provision within that if you, in certain counties, if you have property on a designated scenic river, you actually get a tax break if you meet the land tax benefits piece. So there's some benefits personally that you can do it. This is the Conserve Virginia Scenic layer, I should say, not layers. There are over 20 layers in the Conserve Virginia prioritization for land conservation. And you'll see these purple lanes, these are rivers and roads that are scenic byways or scenic rivers. And the thing that's interesting about this is it's only a 200-foot wide corridor. Well, you know, in some of our byways and highways, you can see way farther than 200 feet. Some of the rivers you can't see more than 10 feet if it's got lots of vegetation along the boundaries. But anyway, that's the way it sits now. So the green is land that is conserved already, and then this purple are areas to be considered. And if we turned on all 20 layers, about 20%, 10 to 20% of all of Virginia is highlighted as prime lands for conservation. So having Scenic be part of that layer is really important, and we're hoping to add view sheds to this too. Because if you all think about that beautiful view when you're driving up Afton Mountain, people pull off and take photographs of Rockfish Valley all the time. There's nothing that preserves that view right now in place. And most of that's private land. And so private landowners can do what they want with their land unless we start protecting it through conservation easements or purchase outright. So this is where I want to just kind of reiterate the importance of Scenic, why we look at it, what it is that it's providing Virginia. And these next several slides are all from Scenic Virginia. They have an annual photographic competition that you may be aware of, and these are all part of that. So I'm going to read the quotes here because I think it's important. Virginia has amazing scenery. Some is particularly striking, but the depth and breadth of the scenic beauty that exists here is amazing. In Virginia, we have it all, from rustic landscapes to glorious rivers, from magnificent mountains to incredible valleys, from rural country roads to dense forest lands. Our Commonwealth is at a crossroads regarding scenic beauty, and so with the guidance of Scenic Virginia and Virginia Tech, they have developed a viewshed program that has been based on scientific research, and they're hoping to have that happen in our communities across the state. So as a result of that in-depth research that was done by Virginia Tech, we came up with this evaluation form for significant view sheds in the state. And we're going to hope to add them to the last map you just saw. So we're going to put you to work now. Dick, go ahead and pass them out. Yeah, pass them both out. So you're going to get a score sheet that looks like what you have on your screen here. And you're going to be asked to fill in this top part, and the score sheet will have this middle part already filled in. And then the bottom part we'll do together after you've looked at the view I'm going to give you. And we're going to do two different views.
Do you want to do the Walker Mountain?
Yes, we're going to do both of them. So that you should get two views, one of Libby and one of Walker.
And I have pencils if you don't have them.
And we have pencils, and if you picked up a dry bag, for some of those of you who came in late, we have a few dry bags up here you're welcome to take. We have Scenic River stickers and brochures about the Scenic Rivers program. So hopefully you'll come and take those afterwards. But for now, and I can help with this. Does anybody need a pen if they don't have one, or a pencil? You have one in your bag. Not that I can't give you another one, but you have one in your bag. Need a pen? Anyone else here need a pen? Yes. You'll use it? You've got one? Anybody else? the other?
You should have two forms,
It's down.
Libby Hill and Walker Mountain.
West of Whitville. Way down. Everybody has two? Anybody need another? You need, there's a walker.
There's a Libby
You
Hill.
need a pen, Tricia?
I've got one. You know, also there's a plan to have a view shed district in Richmond. That happened. Yeah. pretty cool.
That is cool.
It'd be like a historic district.
Okay, oh, cool. So, yeah, Tricia just told me there's a plan to do a view shed district in Richmond, which would be very exciting, kind of like a historic district.
Next summer or fall, the Scenic Virginia photo contest photos will be exhibited out here in the gallery. I think the earliest we can get in here is about June or July, or perhaps September, October, but we're looking at having Leighton Powell come and do a Scenic Virginia's program and also exhibit the material. And then I was going to ask Lynn a question about when will the Mormons Advisory Committee be appointed? Do we know that?
They haven't submitted their application yet.
And do we know whether the webpage material for the Scenic Rivers program can be transferred to the Outdoor Recreation Plan webpage pieces?
So there is a Scenic Rivers webpage
Right.
that's separate from the 50th anniversary webpage, and so the idea is to pull the information from the 50th onto the Scenic.
Okay, all right, thank you. And I've got the microphone, should you have a question or need to speak.
Great. Okay, so I'm going to go through this chart with you all. The top part, as I mentioned, is the part that you all were going to be filling in when you get to see the picture. The bottom part was already filled in on some background research that was already done. So it's the view shed size is the first one. So I think that's pretty straightforward, whether it's panoramic, medium views, or small views. That would be mostly just foreground. Visual complexity and variety. How much variation, right, variety is there in the view? Is it a monochromatic green slope or brown field, or has it got other kinds of interest? Are there different textures? Are there different forms? The coherence and legibility has to do with how much you can understand what you're seeing. Is it too busy? Is it just too plain? What is that? So you all will have to make those determinations when you're looking at that. The next one is ephemeral qualities in the foreground and the middle ground. So that would be like, are there cattle in the field, or is there a field of sunflowers, or is there something else that is regularly there, not clouds in the sky, which you can't count on, but things that might be of seasonal interest showing there. Positive human influence contact in the view shed. So this is, if there's any development in the picture, is it positive? And if it's not, then, you know, you're going to say there's nothing positive in the view shed. Say we're looking at warehouses in downtown Richmond. That would be a 0, okay? And then incongruent or distracting content, that would also be the same kind of thing. Are there junkyards, billboards, transmission lines, cell towers, those kinds of things? All right, does anybody have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Whereas to say whether it's frequent or predictable, and I want to know what the definition of frequent is.
So that would be, would you see it every month, every week? Or predictable would be, you can guarantee that every October it's going to be there.
So it's how often are you going to see it?
So it's basically, yes, how often are you going to see it? Any other questions? All right, so I'm going to let you see what the photograph is, what the view is. When you're done filling out your section, just raise your hand. I mean, you don't have to hold it up. Just raise your hand so I can get a sense when everyone's done, and then we'll talk about the scores, okay? Whoops. Oh, okay. This is Libby Hill, so I've given you the answers to this. This is the public awareness piece. It's already been filled in on your forms. But I'll just walk through it a little bit. So is there demonstrated public appreciation and value for the site? That means, you know, is there interpretive signs or something like that? Yes, sir? Could you see the picture? It's coming up, yes. And how many views is pretty straightforward. What are people doing when they're looking at that site? If there's anything distracting in that site. And then what is the historical, cultural context of the site? And there's the photograph. So this is the view that is believed that Richmond was named after because it looks just like the view of Richmond on the Thames in England.
As an aside, Carl and Mary Corley had to look at this every day of their life when they lived in the Libby house overlooking that view. Terrible, terrible thing. The intent of the program when we roll it out from Scenic, Virginia is that local governments or any individual or any group could nominate or send in a recommendation for consideration, a particular view, and then it will go through the process that you're dealing with right now to establish the significance of the view.
Correct.
And if this were made to be a protected area, they would not be able to build anything which would obstruct the view.
Okay, so Tricia shared with us that if this ends up being a protected area like they're hoping that it will be, then they will not be allowed to build anything that would obstruct the view from this point. So a number of years ago, there were 20-story buildings designed at the base of this hill that would have obstructed this view.
And I think you're talking primarily of this view, right? Because if you look at the view from Afton Mountain, obviously other things. And if you are familiar with Richmond and familiar with this view, there were three concrete storage units down there, which were taken out, 10 years ago now? And then there was this 15-story building that was proposed that has and probably will not happen. And the American Society of Landscape Architects, working with UVA and Scenic, Virginia, and Virginia Tech, did a methodology and assessment workshop, which resulted in what we're doing today, that identified the important views and was able to quantify the impacts. That was done, 8 years ago now? 8 or 9 years ago?
Probably closer to 10.
10?
So who's finished? Okay, so I'll give you all a few minutes. Yeah, I'd like all of you to circle and come up with a score. And then we'll go on and do the whole total score together and. Yes, sir.
Where is the spot on which the picture is taken?
It's on the, it's at the end of the circle at the base of the monument. Oh, they take the man down?
Yeah, they took the man down.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, we have no monuments now with any
Men.
monument on top. We have bases, but no images.
So are you asking us to do the top one,
Yes, ma'am.
but it's on the same one that you've already done here, Libby Hill?
Yeah. So you, I want you all to fill in the top of that sheet. I just did the public concern at the bottom. And then you'll need to put in your score at the bottom of the whole thing. So those top 5 questions, or 6 questions for viewshed scenic quality is what I'm asking each one of you to determine.
And we've been doing this type of exercise at most of the programs that we are presenting at, so that we're validating our methodology.
Right. So what we'll do is, if you don't want to keep them, we'll collect them, and then we keep track of what the result was from the whole group, so that we can see whether or not that's consistent with what the professionals are doing. So- It's for our validation at this point in time, yeah. Because the program hasn't been recognized by the state yet.
And ideally, what will happen is that Scenic Virginia will keep the register, and they will forward to the Department of Conservation and Recreation the candidates that met the criteria for recognition, and the Department of Conservation, using their assessments, will determine which ones would actually be put on the conservation plan or the Virginia Outdoors Plan as part of the layering that they have for resource conservation here in the state.
Right. You had a question, sir?
What do you mean exactly by ephemeral content?
That means things that aren't there all the time. So like crops change, cows change, scenic color changes, seasonal color. All right, so is everyone done? Mostly? All right, so let's go ahead. Oops. There's the view again, just as a reminder. And the scores at the bottom of your page put the public awareness at high. And so now what I want to do is I want to ask how many of you had a final score that was high for this? Raise them up so I can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. How many had medium? Oops. Hold on a second. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Anyone else? How many had low? Okay, so for those of you who had medium, can you tell me why you had lower scores, do you think? So what we could do, oops. We can go through this. So how many of you had this as a panoramic high? Almost all of you. How many had it as a moderate view? Okay. I would have said this is a panoramic view because you would know that also, and there would have been field notes that would have been taken, and the submission forms that Dick mentioned would have that information on it. How about variety and visual complexity? How many had high? Just a few. How many had moderate? Most everybody, okay? Coherence and legibility, how about high? okay, and moderate. A little more on that. Ephemeral qualities in the foreground and middle ground. How many had high? Not many. How many had moderate? Most everybody. Okay. Positive human influence content in the viewshed. How many had high on that? Just a couple. How many had moderate? Most everybody. And how about incongruent and distracting content in the viewshed? How many had high on that? Just a couple. And how many had that it was that was highly visible and then just visible? And how many had not visible? Okay, so that's an interesting one as we look at the photograph, because you have this development here, and you have a little bit of a parking lot there, but the only other things you see are all these towers in the background. And so the question is, how many of you all thought those were the incongruent pieces? Yeah. So you can see, and probably if we got down to the actual scores between those who had high and those who had moderate, we might only be off by a digit, right? 7 to 8 or 8 to 9 or something like that. But those are the things, and as you do more of these, I've been teaching a class at VCU for, well, I've taught it twice now. And it's very interesting to have students do an evaluation at the beginning of the class and one to do one at the end of the class, because they usually score really high the first time and really low the second time, and about the third time they get it like they're a more even thing. The other piece when we do these things is we do it with a group. And the idea is that you all sit and discuss it so that the result everybody can agree with, because they've heard both sides of the story, right? So those who didn't pay attention to the towers because they didn't think they were significant get to say that, and those who thought they were really outrageous get to say that, and then we get to come up with a score in the middle. So now that you've done one, we're going to do another one, okay? So get ready. This is going to be Walker Mountain. You have the public awareness information that's been given to you. So you have that part of the score already. And this is Walker Mountain. So fill in the top half of the first page.
Turn our wine and cheese.
Okay, this is the last one.
I know.
Okay, so who's done? Anybody yet? Almost everyone. Give you another minute or so. There actually isn't. This is just off 77 heading west from 81. You can see the mountain, but not this view of it. All right, everybody done? Pretty much? Okay, so I'm going to leave this up when we're talking about this because you all have the score sheet in front of you. So how many of you all, you'll notice that we had, this is another high public input piece. How many of you had a high score for this one? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. How many had a moderate score? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is that it? Interesting. So this was a little bit more skewed towards the high than the last one was. Can anybody tell me why they scored it higher? No towers. Yep. More colors. Yeah, Shenandoah County and Warren County for sure. Yep. All right. So that gives you an idea. So if we score high and we score high, then it's to be included in the registry. Recommendation for inclusion. See, you had a high and a high. And if it's a moderate high and a moderate score, then it can be included with special considerations. So on Libby Hill, you all scored that one a little lower. Then that could be included as long as it had special considerations, and because of the historic significance and the city might be putting a overlay district on it, then it might be included. So that's how we would use this information to move forward with future planning in Virginia. So just a real quick closing here. What can you do? Just be aware, share with your friends, let people know about these programs, support Scenic Virginia, support your local people that are doing this. Be a member of one of our committees if you like. There's many ways that you can, but the most is, I think, being aware and sharing and supporting those people that are doing this work. And this is my contact information. If you have additional questions, you can give me a call or send me an email, and I'd be happy to respond. I will warn you, I'll be retiring at the 1st of next year, so I don't know who's going to be doing this after that. But if you're interested in having a presentation at your local Rotarian group or something like that, we can make sure that that happens. Any final questions? Thank you so much for your attention, for joining us today. There's dry bags, as I said, brochures and stickers up here. Please come and get them. There's wine and cheese in the back, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn.